Well, this is Claudia, and for the next half hour, I'll be reading from the Investigative Post on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Timeline: Burmese refugees arrest to death. Body camera footage shows Nurul Amin Shah Alam's arrest by Buffalo police over a year ago, setting in motion the chain of events that ended with his death this week. Buffalo police last year tasered, beat, and arrested the Burmese refugee who was found dead Tuesday in downtown nearly a week after federal immigration agents stumped the man, who was nearly blind and spoke no English, at a coffee shop miles from his home. Police body cam footage released Thursday to Investigative Post shows the encounter last February between two officers and Nurul Amin Shah Alam, which set into motion the chain of events that ended in Shah Alam's death. Shah Alam's body was found on Perry Street, near KeyBank Center, home to the Buffalo Sabres of the National Hockey League, according to a police report. His death was determined by the Erie County Medical Examiner to be health-related in nature, city spokesperson Ian Ott said. In a statement Thursday evening, Erie County Health Department spokesperson Cara Kane said the medical examiner had not yet determined a cause or manner of death. According to a police timeline released Thursday, a caller to 911 reported that Shah Alam was no longer moving at 8:30 p.m. on Tuesday. The woman informed the operator that she had passed by an unresponsive male wearing a dark parka and khaki pants who appeared not to be breathing at around 5:30 p.m. The caller described Shah Alam's hands as gray in color. She also noted that she saw Shah Alam moving. The woman only called 911 after she passed by the same location again 3 hours later. At that time, Shah Alam was still on the ground. She observed that he was no longer moving, at which time 911 was contacted. The police timeline states, "It's not clear how Shah Alam ended up at that Perry Street location after Border Patrol agents dropped him off last Thursday night at a Tim Hortons on Niagara Street in the Riverside section of North Buffalo." Video footage viewed by Investigative Post from the Tim Hortons shows a white Border Patrol van pulled up near the drive-thru and released Shah Alam around 8:18 p.m. Thursday. The store was closed, save for the drive-thru. The journey that led to his death began a year ago. On the morning of Saturday, February 15, 2025, Shah Alam left his West Side home for a walk, according to his attorney in a Buffalo police report. Shah Alam, his wife, and two sons had arrived in Buffalo as refugees just weeks prior in December 2024 and were in the country legally. Cooped up due to the cold, his attorney said Shah Alam set out for a stroll when a sunny day arrived. In the need of a walking stick and with $20 in hand, Shah Alam went to a store near his home and purchased a curtain rod, his attorney, Benjamin Malculso of the Legal Aid Bureau, told Investigative Post. When the weather turned bad, Shah Alam headed for home but got lost. Malculso said shortly before 10:30 a.m. he wandered into the backyard of Tracy Ciccone on the 500 block of Tonawanda Street in the Riverside neighborhood. Ciccone reported to Buffalo police that Shah Alam had opened her back gate, let her dog out, and damaged her shed door with his curtain rod walking stick. Upon arrival, police alleged Shah Alam was swinging them in a menacing manner. Officer Christopher Mordino later wrote he believed Shah Alam intended to hurt police with his curtain rod. Malcuso said that wasn't true and that his client was merely startled by the dog and the commotion. Body camera footage shows an officer arriving at Chacón's home, walking down a sidewalk along the side of the house and entering a gate into the backyard. The officer immediately begins shouting at Shah Alam to drop his curtain rod. "Put it down," the officer is heard shouting. "You're going to get tased. Put it in the snow." Shah Alam can be heard saying okay and lets one end of the rod drop onto the ground, though he remains holding the other end. He holds his free hand out in what appears to be an attempt to calm the officer. As officers point their tasers at him, Shah Alam moves closer. They fire and he can be heard speaking Runega. He and his family are Rohingya, a friend said Thursday. Shah Alam then raises one rod as if to defend himself, the video shows. At that point, the officers tackle an attempt to handcuff Shah Alam. Get on the fucking ground, one of the officers shouts repeatedly. Once on the ground, one officer calls Shah Alam a fucking asshole and punches him in the head several times. The police report later stated Shah Alam bit both of the officers, causing minor injuries. In the process of getting handcuffed, Shah Alam appears to say, "I can't breathe," in English, and an officer responds, "Take a breath, you're okay." In the aftermath, one officer speaking to others who had arrived on scene can be heard saying he's going to be injured. "I don't know how bad. He got hit by all 4 tasers and still came at us with the fucking poles. He almost got shot." A female officer named Brown is later heard saying, "I almost had to pull my gun out." Shah Alam was eventually charged with assault, trespass, and possession of a weapon. The curtain rods. Attorneys said ICE had placed an immigration detainer on him once he was booked into the Erie County Holding Center. It was 4 months before District Attorney Michael Keene's office issued an indictment via grand jury on the charges, according to a statement from Keene's office. Following a hearing in late May 2025, Shah Alam's bail was set at $5,000. Fearing that ICE would take custody and transfer him out of state, Shah Alam's family opted to keep him in jail, where they could visit him, Malcuso told Investigative Post. A family friend, Khalida Shah, confirmed Thursday that the family feared Shah Alam being detained by ICE had he been bailed out last year. Months of hearings followed. Malcuso said the case was nearing trial. On February 9th, Keene's office agreed to offer Shah Alam a plea deal. "My decision was the result of a comprehensive evaluation of his conduct, criminal history, acceptance of responsibility, medical condition, time served in pretrial custody, and the proposed resolution," Keene said in a statement. "I also consider the significant collateral consequences that would result from a felony conviction, including mandatory deportation." Shah Alam pleaded guilty to 2 charges, trespassing and misdemeanor possession of a weapon, his curtain rod. His immigration attorney, Sienna McLean, said those offenses did not warrant detention or deportation by ICE. She said she communicated with the agency about those charges last week and that its lawyers agreed that Shah Alam would not be subject to federal detention upon his release. His plea to the charges, she said, didn't make him removable from the United States. When he went over to Border Patrol, they can look and say, "Oh, wait, he's not removable." But instead of saying anything to anybody about his impending release, they didn't say anything. Ryan said Thursday that the Border Patrol should have brought Shah Alam back to the holding center, where sheriff's deputies could have then contacted his family, which had visited him often. The lawyer was not informed, and the family is just saying, "You had our contact information, you had our address." Shah, the family friend, said Thursday after Shah Alam's burial, "Why not drop him at the addresses that are on file for him? Why not bring you back to the holding center rather than Tim Hortons?" What happened after Shah Alam was in Border Patrol's custody is not entirely clear. Shah Alam's attorneys said they believed it was ICE that had lodged a detainer against him, meaning that agency would take custody and take him to the federal detention center in Batavia, where his lawyers expected to pick him up last Friday. A police report also states it was ICE that lodged the detainer. Additional police records indicate Border Patrol lodged the detainer. Christopher Horvatis, a spokesperson for the Erie County Sheriff's Office, said it was Border Patrol that requested custody of Shah Alam upon his release from jail. Horvatis said deputies called Border Patrol agents who picked Shah Alam up upon his release from the holding center. That happened just after 4:30 p.m. on Thursday. Shah, the family friend, said Shah Alam's family waited for hours that day, hoping to pick him up from the holding center. McLean said the sheriff's office should not have called Border Patrol. "I think there was a serious error here in sending him to Border Patrol," she said. "My issue was it supposed to be Border Patrol in the first place?" Michael Nitskoda, a Customs and Border Patrol spokesman, said it was only after agents took custody of Shah Alam that they determined he was not amenable to removal. Agents then, Nitskoda said, offered him a courtesy ride, which he chose to accept, to a coffee shop rather than be released directly from the Border Patrol station that Tim Hortons on the 2200 block of Niagara Street was determined to be a warm, safe location near his last known address. Nizgoda said the coffee shop was closed at the time. Only the drive-through window was open. The surveillance camera footage obtained by Investigative Post shows Shah Alam being let out of the Border Patrol van and walking by the drive-through window. He then paces back and forth near the locked door and eventually walks through the parking lot towards a Family Dollar store. The van leaves 1 minute after agents drop Shah Alam off. Between his arrest and release, Shah Alam's family had moved to the Broadway Fillmore neighborhood on the east side, some 5 miles away. Malcuso said he spent all day Friday in Batavia searching for his client. He and Shah Alam's family spent the weekend searching Buffalo, including the family's former neighborhood. Malcuso opened a missing persons case Sunday afternoon. The case hit a snafu on Monday when Special Victims Unit Detective Richard High closed the case after noting the ICE detainer, not realizing it was outdated. He reopened the case 4 hours later. McLean said she was deeply disappointed and saddened by Shah Alam's death. I feel like in a situation like this, we wouldn't necessarily be here if Border Patrol had just exercised a little bit of humanity. On Thursday, following a prayer and burial service, friends and other representatives of the Shah Alam family said that they are demanding justice. Shah, speaking to reporters at the burial site on the east side, said Shah Alam has 3 sons left in Burma, while his oldest son in Buffalo only has a part-time job. The family is struggling to pay bills, she said, and is in need of financial assistance. They were refugees, Shah said. They came home here seeking home, and home killed them. Save the Michaels loses funding and closes facility. State and county agencies announced they no longer contract with the beleaguered nonprofit, which abruptly closed its Lockport facility this week. The news follows an Investigative Post report into Save the Michaels management. Note on the door: Save the Michaels apologizes for any inconvenience but is temporarily closed. This was not a decision made lightly. We are reorganizing due to a loss of funding. Continue to check back with us. Thank you. Save the Michaels, a well-known addiction treatment nonprofit with services across Western New York, has indefinitely closed its Lockport office and is scaling back at least part of its operations at its Buffalo headquarters, according to current and former employees. The news follows announcements that the New York State and Erie County officials are cutting off funding to the 15-year-old organization, as well as Investigative Post investigation, published last week into concerns about the nonprofit's management. In a Facebook post from Saturday, Save the Michaels announced that the State Office of Addiction Services and Supports, which oversees the distribution of millions of dollars to combat substance abuse, had suddenly ended its contracts with the nonprofit last Friday. That decision was confirmed Monday afternoon by an Office of Addiction Services and Supports spokesperson who said in a statement that the agency had previously identified serious fiscal and operational challenges at Save the Michaels, then informed ongoing oversight and planning discussions. The spokesperson said the state agency had given Save the Michaels notice that it would cease funding the nonprofit on March 29th. Erie County officials told Investigative Post last week that it would not fund the organization this year. Julie Israel, a co-founder, board member, and administrator for Save the Michaels, confirmed the state agency was cutting off funding. She told Investigative Post that Save the Michaels intended to appeal the agency's decision. The state and county decisions are serious blows to the organization. Since October 2017, the Office of Addiction Services and Supports has provided Save the Michaels $5,331,478 through state contracts and grants, according to records from the State Comptroller's Office. Last year, Erie County paid Save the Michaels $715,893, some of which was awarded by the Office of Addiction Services and Supports via a pass-through agreement with the county's Department of Mental Health. Multiple sources confirmed that the Lockport closure occurred late last week. The Niagara Gazette reported the closure of the Lockport facility Monday afternoon. Adam Taylor, who has worked at Save the Michaels for the past 2 years and most recently was in charge of one of its treatment programs, confirmed that operations at the Buffalo office had been scaled back and the Lockport drop-in center had been closed temporarily. Taylor said that Lockport employees will still do mobile outreach, which means the organization will continue to offer overdose reversal drugs to individuals on the street, among other services, but the drop-in center will be closed. Taylor posted a picture of that sign on Facebook this past Saturday, taped to the front door of the 144 Main Street address of Save the Michaels Lockport office. The office opened in 2023. Taylor could not share a date for the Lockport Drop-In Center's reopening or how those seeking services would find help in the interim. There's a lot of questions I really don't have answers for, Taylor told Investigative Post. According to Save the Michaels website and accounts from former employees, the 144 Main Street site is a drop-in center that offers peer-led recovery groups, access to recovery coaches, and transportation to grocery shopping, among other services. Investigative Post reached out to Avi Israel, founder of Save the Michaels, for comment about the closures. He would not provide any additional information about the closure. Israel announced on December 26th he was stepping down as chief executive officer effective the beginning of this year. I don't have a goddamn word to say to you, Israel told Investigative Post, adding that the closures were none of your fucking business. Last week, Investigative Post published an investigation based on 4 months of reporting, drawing from numerous interviews with government officials and more than a dozen former employees. The investigation cited several audits and public records, and most critical of which was an audit completed by the Office of Addiction Services and Supports in August 2024. The audit found years of fiscal noncompliance and mismanagement, including unapproved out-of-state travel and loans from company coffers, unapproved raises to Israel and his wife, and a failure to provide financial records with state regulators in a timely manner over the span of years. The nonprofit's new CEO, Jessica Goff, who did not respond to multiple interview requests prior to publication last Wednesday, shared a statement with Investigative Post, which was also posted to the organization's Facebook page. Contrary to the reports that are citing outdated and inaccurate information, Save the Michaels operates within the laws and rules of this state. We have helped tens of thousands of Western New Yorkers find and sustain their recovery. We are requesting that Erie County government provide us with the opportunity to respond to any concerns that they may have, the statement reads. To date, they have not offered that opportunity. A county spokesperson told Investigative Post that the County Office of Mental Health is looking into setting up a meeting to discuss concerns with the individuals from Save the Michaels, but confirmed that there was no set date. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Investigative Post on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Continuing with our article on Save the Michaels closure in Lockport, New York. The state agency is working closely with Erie County and local partners to ensure individuals receiving services are supported through a careful and coordinated transition, said the spokesperson. Chris Harzinski is a former Save the Michaels employee who founded his own addiction services provider, Creative Restorations Incorporated, in 2023. The organization provides clients with transportation to and from rehab programs and medical appointments, as well as food and other services. He told Investigative Post he is already looking at opening an office for patients impacted by the loss of services they sought at Save the Michaels. Harzinski said he hopes to get a building big enough to offer drop-in services and office space for a housing navigator, a Medicaid screener, and vocational trainings. Harzinski was not surprised by the news of Save the Michaels closure or Erie County's ongoing concerns about the organization's fiscal and operational issues. This is a long time coming. People have been reporting situations such as this about this agency for quite some time because they recognized it and nothing's been done about it, Harzinski told Investigative Post. Housing shortage could cost New York politically. As housing construction booms in red states, blue states like New York are falling behind. The likely result, a loss of congressional seats and electoral votes. The next U.S. Census likely won't be good for New York. Because of nationwide population trends, the state is projected to lose 2 congressional seats, and with them 2 electoral votes for president, according to recent findings from Carnegie Mellon University. The other states that are projected to lose multiple congressional seats and electoral votes are California and Illinois, according to the research. All 3 states consistently support Democrats at the statewide level and in presidential elections. On the other hand, two states are projected to gain multiple seats in electoral votes. Florida and Texas both are set to add 4 seats, and both consistently support Republicans at the statewide level and for president. If these projections are accurate, the Democratic candidate for president in 2032 could win every state that Kamala Harris won in 2024, plus Michigan, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, and still lose the election. One reason why blue states are losing ground: the red states build far more housing than they do. From 2021 to 2024, Florida and Texas issued permits for over 1.7 million new homes. California, Illinois, and New York issued fewer than 700,000 total, despite having a combined population over 15 million people larger than Florida and Texas' whole total. Florida and Texas have a lot of laws that facilitate and incentives housing production, said Paul Williams, director of the Center for Public Enterprise, a think tank. The final changes after the 2030 census could be less dramatic than the current projections, Williams noted, since the flow of people out of blue states and into red ones has been trending down recently, though it remains significant. New York's housing shortage is driving people out of the state to places with cheaper options, according to research from the Fiscal Policy Institute, a liberal think tank. Even when moving to lower tax state like Florida, middle-income people save significantly more on their rent or mortgage than they do from lower taxes, FPI's research found. Actually making it possible and affordable for people to stay in New York is existential for the Democratic Party, said Anne Marie Gray, executive director of the pro-housing development group Open New York. In New York, a major reason for the lack of new housing is local zoning codes, which often heavily restrict new housing in towns and cities or even bar it entirely. Are New York lawmakers concerned about this? Perhaps, but bold, paradigm-shifting ideas have been largely absent from the legislature. Everybody bemoans the predicament we're in, and that's where the concern stops, said Assembly member Linda Rosenthal, who chairs the Chamber's Housing Committee. As the legislature stalls, Governor Kathy Hochul is taking on a project that could boost housing statewide, relaxing New York State's environmental review law. As it stands, the law can require developers to spend years seeking approval for even minor new projects and leaves them open to lawsuits by NIMBY, communities seeking to derail new housing altogether. Hochul's proposed change would allow small and medium-sized developments to skip the state environmental review process. This would turn building into a free-for-all. Developers would still have to follow all relevant environmental regulations and protections in New York law. Outside New York City, the exception would only apply if the buildings are located on sites that have already been developed, heading off concerns that it would allow open space to be paved over for new housing. When a community says yes, the state is going to step out of the way and let them go forward and build, Hochul said at an event Tuesday. New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani was also in attendance and praised Hochul for her taking the action necessary to speed up the housing process. In response to a question from New York Focus, Hochul described the proposal as just a first step towards boosting housing statewide. If we fix this one aspect, we can get them much further, if it is not the end game at all. For much of her tenure, Governor Hochul has touted pro-housing bona fides. In 2024, she said, she and the legislature reached a deal to boost housing construction that she called transformative and comprehensive, but the deal's tax breaks and zoning changes were mostly focused on New York City and didn't have a major impact in the rest of the state. In 2023, Hochul proposed a more far-reaching plan that would have required all areas of the state to build new housing, but it was defeated by fierce opposition from the legislature, especially among representatives of suburban areas. New York City suburbs have been especially resistant to allowing new housing. The 4 suburban counties, including and surrounding New York City, Nassau, Rockland, Suffolk, and Westchester, have issued just 5 new housing permits per 1,000 residents so far this decade. Even a region-wide consensus that more housing is needed on Long Island, particularly more affordable housing, hasn't shifted this trend, said Lawrence Levy, Dean of the National Center for Suburban Studies at Long Island's Hofstra University. Since housing policy is managed down by the town rather than regionally, many localities become villages of no, Levy said. In Huntington, Long Island, for example, the town board ditched a 2023 proposal to allow more basement apartments after massive opposition at a public meeting, including one resident who expressed fear of migrants, pedophiles, or criminals moving into the apartments, and another who urged the board not to change the complexion of this beautiful community. Senator Brian Kavanaugh, who chairs the Chamber's Housing Committee, said that he thinks state lawmakers should be stepping in and putting more pressure on localities to build. But it's not a sure bet that they will, he acknowledged. I don't want to make some grand prediction about what will happen, he said. To become law, Hochul's plan has to pass the legislature, which is not a given. Rosenthal, the Assembly Housing Chair, said she's still making up her mind and is concerned about unintended consequences. I certainly don't want that in the haste to facilitate more housing. We lose environmental protection, she said. In New York City, experts say it's likely they will boost in home building from former Mayor Eric Adams' signature City of Yes housing plan, which was enacted in December 2024. His administration estimated that the zoning changes in the plan will allow for the building of 80,000 new units in New York City over the next decade. Mayor Zoran Mamdani appears to be interested in continuing that work. He has kept Adams' housing staffers in his administration and campaigned on a platform of using city funds to build 200,000 new units of affordable housing over the next decade. Sharing a podium with Hochul on Tuesday, Mamdani sounded hopeful that the city and state can put an end to the high housing costs that drive New Yorkers out of the state. Everywhere you look in this city, there is proof of what a city that is willing to build can deliver, he said, and yet for too long we have not extended that same limitless ambition to the kind of building that matters most to New Yorkers, the housing they need to live. Even so, Adams and Mamdani's combined efforts, if they came to fruition, would still fill less than half of the 600,000 home gap that opened up after the past 4 years between Florida and New York. You've been listening to a reader of articles and features from the Investigative Post. We read from the Investigative Post on Thursdays at 8:30 a.m. Your reader has been Claudia, and I thank you for listening.
Good morning. Welcome to another broadcast day on the NACO Frontier Radio Reading Service, a private, not-for-profit organization. As always, please feel free to contact us with your comments, suggestions, and any questions you may have. And please stay with us. Our Reading the Buffalo News is coming up in just a sec.
The following program is intended for listeners